Welcome to Deals and Disputes with the Webb Law Group.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of Deals and Disputes with Webb, Allbritton, and Gentry, where we explore some of the most pressing legal challenges of our time. And today I am joined by Bailey Rhodes, an attorney with Webb, Allbritton, and Gentry. I'm excited to talk about some employment law today, something that's a very hot topic in our country currently. Bailey, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So obviously there's a lot in the news about changes employees are facing around the country. From your perspective, how is this impacting private business owners and employers when it comes to managing employee expectations and rights?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially because most of the changes right now really deal with federal employees. It's creating an interesting dynamic, though, because employees are seeing changes. They're getting worried, expressing concerns, and employers aren't always sure what to do. So, what I've been telling people is right now, a lot of those changes are not necessarily impacting or making any changes for private business. That being said, if they're businesses that are federal contractors or if they receive any kind of federal funds, grants, they do need to be paying attention to see if any of these changes affect them, even though they're a private business owner. And they need to continue following their state laws and the federal laws that apply. But just continue really to watching the news. But I think the big thing right now is employers need to be ensuring employees our rules still apply. We aren't yet seeing changes trickle down for the most part to the private industry. So I would tell business owners kind of keep calm, keep your employers calm, but stay alert. Firms like ours and news sources are trying to put information out timely so that business owners know what they need to pay attention to. And you really do have to keep paying attention right now.
Yeah, and there's so much in the news about even the private sector tech companies with layoffs, lots of layoffs, and that just seems to be kind of high up on the news, the news pecking order when you go to any sort of any publication. So it makes sense that employees are getting worried, that and then in turn makes employers worried, and everybody's confused.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I know there's a lot of fear from an employer standpoint. Am I going to get in trouble? Am I going to do something wrong? If I do a layoff or if I have to let people go, what do I face? In Texas, our employees generally are employees that will. So unless you've got a contract with your employees, which some businesses do, most generally don't have contracts. They still have a right to terminate those employees as long as they don't do it for any legal reason. So you can't terminate somebody because they're in a protected class, right? I always tell people there's nothing you can do to stop someone from filing a lawsuit. If you have someone that's angry and they want to try to file a lawsuit, they can do it. But for most employers, for Texas employers in particular, there are a lot of protections, a lot of defenses in place so that unless you're terminating somebody because of membership in a protected class, as an act of retaliation for, say, reporting wrongful activity, or you're not firing somebody because, say, they didn't do an illegal activity, you're pretty well protected if you do get sued. There's some comfort there, right? There's nobody that can completely stop someone, say, from bringing a lawsuit, but you've got a lot of protections if one is filed. Employers just need to continue, following their policies, making sure that they're consistent with the way they treat employees, and they should be okay.
Yeah, you've mentioned Texas a few times now. It's an important distinction because it is different state by state. I know someone in California who basically he got filed a wrongful termination against him, and it was total bunk.
Absolutely.
I mean, his lawyer was like, "There's not much you can do. All the protections are for the employee."
Right. Absolutely. My clients that have offices and employees sitting in different states, whenever they talk to me about what it's like to be an employer in Texas, they often say things like, "Oh, can I move all my employees there?" I mean, there's a reason that businesses have come here and a lot of reasons, but one of them is our employment laws are very employer friendly.
Yeah. It's got to be a good balance there for sure.
Yeah.
So when it comes to something serious like a wrongful termination suit, what factors should business owners be particularly vigilant about in today's climate to avoid any sort of claims of wrongful termination?
Yeah, I mean, I think one is if you've got policies, you've got to make sure you follow your policies. What we see, where claims are created is the employer has a handbook and they don't equally apply it, whether intentionally or not, across different groups of people. And that can create an opportunity for a lawsuit. Taking internal claims seriously. I think that businesses in general are seeing a lot more claims reported to management of, say, discrimination or retaliation for talking about discrimination. Businesses are seeing a lot of American with Disabilities Act or ADA claims. So whenever those, and by claim, I mean an employee is coming forward and saying, I need an ADA accommodation or I was discriminated against, those are examples. In the past, businesses might have been able to quickly look at it and move along and not set themselves up for claims against them. But because of not only the climate today, but, social media, the ability of people to share how they have prevailed in making claims, businesses have to take everything that's reported to them seriously and make sure that they have, an HR department or a person that's equipped to handle those. And whenever they go beyond just handling an internal investigation or even sometimes handling an internal investigation, seek legal counsel whenever it's not a clear-cut issue.
And when it comes to things like another big talking point in the news, the DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, federal programs are getting rid of that. A lot of private sectors are getting rid of that. Then there's still companies that are even not quite sure if they can do it or if they're not supposed to do it. Basically, how should employers approach these kind of issues so that they stay compliant, but they also maintain their desired inclusion policies?
Yeah, this is a hard one. Certainly employers should still comply and can still comply with the federal and state laws that prohibit discrimination. We have Title VII, American with Disabilities Act, the Age Discrimination and Employment Act, and then most states have their own state statutes. Many communities have even, a citywide ordinance. So still comply with all of those provisions, definitely. And those are still the law. DEI is a little bit more tricky because as we talked about earlier, though those policies have all been federal, for federal employers. Again, if you are a recipient of grants, if you are a federal contractor, you've got to be really careful here because it's possible that some of those prohibitions apply to your business. And then for just a straight private employer, I think you have to be really careful. There is a chance that the administration will come after those policies. And so I think that there's a way to do it where, you are proclaiming yourself an equal employment opportunity company. You are being intentional about making sure that you are equal across the board. But a lot of places are scaling back broad pronouncements of DEI, just because they're concerned that that will put them, under a microscope. So it's a little bit of question right now, I think, of what your risk tolerance is. And, knowing that if you decide to full force advertise a policy like that, you could potentially face some issues if the administration does move those regulations to the private sector. By the same token, you're going to lose customers because a lot of customers have been very upset to see that their favorite businesses are no longer promoting DEI efforts.
Yep.
So, it's a tricky place to be right now. I don't think that anything has happened that has said you absolutely cannot do it or should not do it. But I do think you have to be really careful if you're a company that has been verbally in your advertisements, really promoting your DEI policies, and then you want to continue doing that.
I suppose you can always spin it in a different way, like you said, you can talk about how your equal opportunity and all that without specifically using that acronym.
Exactly, and that's Title VII is all about equal employment opportunity. There are all kinds of laws out there that are still on the books, so I think you can absolutely promote diversity within your organization and do it in a compliant and legal way without this, the strong stance on DEI that we've seen.
Obviously, remote work has been a thing for a long time now, but it really, really kicked up during COVID. What are some of the key legal considerations when managing employees across different states or even countries?
Yeah, absolutely. It's increased incrementally. I worked from home in 2011. Before that was even a thing, I did that for a while. It's far easier now than when I was doing it. But the first thing I tell employers is make sure that it works still for your business. A lot of employees became very emboldened. It's convenient, right? You can work anywhere. Yep. You can get tasks around the house. It's wonderful. No more
40-minute commute and traffic and all that stuff. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. In terms of efficiency and operations, it's a really good thing. But some businesses are people businesses and they need to be in the office, and they feel like they can't tell people that they have to be in the office just because of the kind of the trajectory of work from home. So I think it's always important to kind of step back and say, okay, do we need to allow it? Does it make sense for our business? And usually it does for certain employees, but sometimes it doesn't. So that's step one. Then if you decide, okay, we are going to allow work from home, the next kind of inquiry is, are we going to allow work from home in states other than where our main office is situated? Obviously, it's different if you've got offices all over the country or all over the world, but there are a lot of businesses that, just like people felt entitled to work from home, they then felt entitled to move somewhere else. Maybe they have a mountain home in Colorado and they'd rather be there for 6 months out of the year and at the beach 6 months out of the year and keep their job in Texas. And, that works
Sounds
great.
pretty awesome.
Yeah, sounds good to me. So if you're going to allow that, then employers have to understand the laws that apply to them in those other states. Just because my Texas company has one person sitting in Colorado and one person sitting in California and one person sitting in New Jersey, I don't get to say you work for a Texas company. I will only follow Texas law. I am now subjecting myself to all of those laws, which, as we mentioned earlier, California's got very favorable employment laws. And so you could actually have to give that employee more rights than you have to give your employees that are sitting in your say New Jersey office or alone in New Jersey or in Texas. Some states are very strange, have strange quirky rules. Like Illinois, payroll has to be processed within 13 days of the end of the pay period. So most it's 2 weeks or a month, but in Illinois it's 13 days. And I had a client run into that. They had one person and it was such a pain in the neck because they had to have a special payroll for that one person.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm originally from Chicago, so I know all about the quirkiness of the Illinois laws for sure.
Yes. Exactly. And then also, they're going to be subject to employment taxes potentially income taxes in those states. And it's possible then that you as an employer would have to pay that state payroll taxes. Another example is Texas workers' comp insurance is not mandatory for employers. It's a good thing for employers to have, but it's not required. And some states it is. So you could also have to get different insurance policies. So it's not as simple. I know I've had clients who, their great employee wants to move to another state and they want to do everything they can to keep them. And that's, the wonderful thing of having Zoom and, all of the recording platforms and, all the capabilities we have now. It's a great way to keep good employees, but there are some administrative headaches that you have to be aware of.
Do your due diligence is what you would say to anybody considering allowing for something like that.
Absolutely. And it's probably worthwhile, to consult somebody who is an employment lawyer, an HR professional in that other state to make sure that you're getting, and a CPA, to make sure you're checking all of those boxes.
What have you seen as far as the return to work, if you will, where a lot of companies are but like telling people, hey, you have to come back to work now. There's resistance because of all those things that we talked about with the commute and the easy, and I get it. I mean, it's a quality of life issue. We can all relate to that and understand it. But what are you seeing as far as from a legal perspective, how that's sort of going down?
Yeah, I think that I've had a lot of clients go through that, particularly some that just find that they're not effective with their people at home.
Sure, I totally understand. Yeah, especially certain jobs. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And so normally, other than the pushback you would expect where they have to make decisions on, okay, well, you're not going to continue to work for us. The tricky legal issue that often comes up is ADA accommodations. Mm-hmm. So we'll have people that, for whatever reason, they think that, or the, doctor said it's better for you to work from home. And so then they ask for the ability to continue working from home because it would accommodate their disability. And so then the employer has to go through an ADA inquiry. Can they continue to do their job? Is it reasonable for us? And make sure that they, consider that in making the decision about whether or not they allow that particular individual to come back. But as long as you don't have an employment contract telling someone that they are allowed to work from home, generally speaking, legally, it's not a problem to just say, sorry, this is our policy now.
And even if someone has a compelling case, there are definitely situations where you're like, it's just our company can't function the same.
Right. Right.
Especially if you're a collaborative environment, or you really need to be around each other, and you need to have
Right.
meetings, and you have big whiteboards with all sorts of stuff all over it. I mean, like,
Right.
it's a lot different doing that over Zoom than it is in person.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. And sometimes it's not even, with the best intentions, you're not able to function
Right.
without the
Right.
people coming back. So employers are having to get creative because at the same time, people want that benefit and they're
Right.
willing to go look somewhere else, that has the benefit. So I see a lot of, flexibility and kind of collaboration with our employer clients trying to find ways to make it work with their employees.
What would you say is an employment law that's had the biggest impact on small to medium-sized businesses over the past 12 to 24 months?
The big two that come to mind for that are just kind of the changing landscape regarding non-compete agreements. Right now they are still valid, but businesses have spent a lot of time thinking, are they going to be valid? Are they not going to be valid? Can I enforce them? Can I violate them? That's been a big one. And then the other one, early in 2024, the way that independent contractors were classified and considered was changed a little bit. The test that was used was different. And so a lot of businesses that have had people as independent contractors found themselves going back and reconsidering whether they would still be classified as independent contractors or should be turned into employees under the new test. It's a totality of the circumstance test where you look at a number of different factors, and it can be costly, very costly for employers that have had a bunch of independent contractors to have to go back and change them to become employees.
Mm-hmm.
And so those two things, I think that a lot of energy in small businesses has been spent on those. And then a third has been the Corporate Transparency Act, a similar one that's been, you have to comply with, this filing. We're going to enforce it. We're not going to enforce it. Currently, we don't think they're going to enforce it, but we're waiting actually this week on more information on that act. So those are kind of the big three.
The non-compete one has always fascinated me because, like, if you have a really specialized skill set,
Yeah.
it can make it really difficult if you want to move on to some other place for whatever reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And often if those get litigated, a court's going to say that it was too constraining on you and you couldn't perform your job. And that's not the purpose of the non-compete laws.
Sure.
But you spend a lot of time and money getting in front of a judge. So it's always interesting.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. Do you have any insight on anything that you see coming down the pipeline that might change the way that the laws are going, or are you just as just like wait and see as the rest of us?
I feel like on the non-compete or just in general?
Just in general.
In general, I feel like it's a lot of wait and see right now. Things seem to be changing on a daily basis. And I think if there's any time that as a business owner, you need to be paying attention to the news, it's definitely now. I know that law firms like mine are trying to send out, we try to send out timely briefings just so that our clients know what's going on and what might affect them. And your best bet's just going to be keep watching for those.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably pretty true. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in to Deals and Disputes with West, Webb, Allbritton, and Gentry. To connect with the team, visit westweblaw.com, and that is Webb with 2 B's. Please like and subscribe to our channel. We love having you here. Bailey, thanks so much for the time. That's a really fascinating topic, really timely topic, and appreciate all your insight.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.